If you could only keep 12 games in your collection, what would you pick? Well, the last few days here in my hometown have been pretty crazy with weather. We've had tornadoes, hail, all of that crazy stuff. And I actually happened to be going out of town the day that a really, really bad storm was supposed to hit. And before I left, I packed up some games that I wanted to have on me in case of the worst case situation where, I come home and something's happened to my house or my board game. So I inadvertently answered this prompt, and it was pretty interesting because a lot of these games surprised me. If you would have asked me the same question beforehand, I might have picked some different games, but these are the games that I went with based on just my instincts. And let's go ahead and start with the first game. Now, first up, we have Ark Nova. You probably can't see the box right now because of my cat, but this was the first game I picked, and it was a really easy pick for me because A, it's my #1 board game of all time, and B, it's just an incredible game. I feel like there is so much content packed into this game. If you're not familiar with it, in this game you are creating a zoo, and you're going to be working to work on conservation efforts. You have to work on the appeal of your zoo by adding animals into it, and it's just so good. There's so many mechanisms in this game that make it incredible. You have the core action selection, which is really fun, where you have to choose which action you're doing, and then when you do, you slide it down to the end and it changes the power of the action that you're choosing. You have the tile placement with the enclosures that you're placing into the zoo. You have tableau building. There's just so much to this game, and that's why I think it's so good, and it's really good to have in someone's collection. Another similar game would be Terraforming Mars. Both of these games have just so much content packed in there, and you're never going to have the same game twice. There's a lot of variability with it, and all in all, it's an easy pick. This game is incredible. The second game I picked is actually my #2 game of all time, and this is Uwe Rosenberg's A Feast for Odin. And in this game, this is a giant sandbox open world game where you are taking control of a Viking clan, and you're doing whatever you can to be the most bountiful clan. And you can do things like go hunting, you can pillage and raid different settlements, you can explore new islands, you can raise animals. There's just so much to do in this game, and similarly to Ark Nova, I feel like you can play this game 100 times and you're never going to have the same game twice. There's so many different strategies you can take. I love the setting. I love everything about this game. So I knew that if I could only have 12 games, this is going to be one of them for sure. Next up, we have Skate Summer. Now, this is a game that kind of surprised me looking back. If you asked me this prompt before I left, I don't know if I would have chose this or not, but I'm glad I did because in this game, you are a skateboarder trying to pull off as many tricks as you can without bailing, and I love this game. I'm a skateboarder myself, been skating for over 20 years, and this game really is a nostalgia trip for me. It kind of reminds me of the Tony Hawk video games. And it's so good. I just think it's very accessible. Anyone can play this. It's just chaotic fun. You're gonna crash, you're gonna fall most likely. And I just love everything about it. It's a very different game than a lot of the other games that I'm gonna be talking about today. It's not the most, there is strategy for sure, but it's push your luck. It's you're at the will of the dice, which makes it fun and a really solid pick to have in my collection. Next up is another sort of surprising game for me, and this is Watergate. This is a 2-player game where players are either taking control of the Nixon administration trying to cover up the Watergate scandal, or the press who is trying to bring this scandal to light. And this is a fun, quick game. It takes about 30 minutes to an hour, where you are sort of playing this tug of war where you're trying to, as the Nixon administration, block off connections that the press is making to the scandal. And if you are the press, you're trying to gain these connections and link these situations or the scandal to Nixon. And you have, each player has their own deck of cards, and these cards are going to have really cool, historically accurate abilities on them and things you can do to kind of mess up the other player, a lot of counters and things like that. All in all, a really, really fun game and a great 2-player game, but also just an incredible game overall and really good to have in your collection. My cat is currently attacking my hand, so please disregard that. But yeah, this game's really good. If you have not played this, I fully recommend it. It is so good. The next game I went with is Undaunted. Now, I have both North Africa and Normandy packed into the expansion box. And in this game, you are taking control of various army. If you're playing Normandy, it's going to be the US and Germany, and you are working to complete your objective and defeat your opponent. This is a 1v1 game or 2v2 if you have this expansion, and this game's just amazing. It's a deck building game where like I said, you're taking control of these armies. You have all kinds of different soldiers, which are gonna have different abilities. Moku, come here, buddy. You have different abilities and can perform different things. You know, if you have a sniper, you can shoot your opponent from really far away. If you have a rifleman, you're able to control various territories. All kinds of really cool stuff packed into this game. I love the theme. You know, I was a huge fan of like Medal of Honor and Call of Duty, so this sort of hits that, scratches that itch that I want in my collection, and it's just all in all so good. It's very tense. You know, when you're fighting, you're rolling dice, so you're like at the will of the dice, like I mentioned in Skate Summer, which makes it fun. There's still a ton of strategy involved, but having that little bit of luck just makes it so much more interesting and chaotic and fun. And I love Undaunted. It's so good. I believe on my last top 10 video board games of all time, it was number 10, I think. And it's just amazing. If you have not played this, fully recommend it. It is a great game to have in your collection. Next up, we have Sea Salt and Paper. Now, in this game, you're working to create the best ocean. Really what you're doing though is collecting sets of cards. Once you get 2 of those cards, you're able to play them for points or to perform different actions like steal a card from your opponent or draw another card from the deck. And very straightforward game, very lightweight, very accessible, and that's what I wanted to have in my collection, is at least a few games that are lighter and kind of fit that mold, and this does just that. It is a really good game and just a good addition to anyone's collection. Coming in at number 7 is one of my favorite roll and writes, if not my favorite roll and write of all time. This is Dinosaur Island Roar and Write, essentially Jurassic Park, the board game. And in this game, you are working to create the best dinosaur theme park. You're going to be collecting DNA and creating new dinosaurs. You're going to be adding enclosures to your park and giving tour guides. All in all, a really fun game. It's on the heavier side of roll and writes. It's not going to be as easy as some of the common ones like Cartographers, for example, but it is so good. I feel like in this box there's so much content packed into it, and every game's going to be different. Plus, I do like the idea of having at least one roll and write in my collection, and this fits that mold perfectly. I think it's such a good game. If you have not gotten a chance to try it, please do. Even if you've tried some of the other iterations like Dinosaur Island, the full board game, or Dinosaur World, and you haven't tried this, I do recommend it. This is actually like the highest rated one on BGG. It doesn't quite have as many ratings as some of the other ones, but it's really good. It's able to pack that experience. The bigger board games usually last a couple hours. You can play this in around an hour, maybe even less, and it's just so good. It's so good. You've got to try it. I recommend it. Next up, we have Clank Catacombs. Now, in the Clank series, you are taking control of a mercenary, trying to explore the map and get the most amount of treasure you can and escape with your life. Now, in Clank Catacombs, you are exploring a catacomb, but the reason this one is so good is because every time you explore a new room, you flip a tile over, so the board is 100% fully modular. Every single time you play this game, it's going to be so different from the previous play, and that's why I love it. This is also a deck builder, which I just so happen to love, and there's so many cool cards in this game. You have different artifacts that you can use or different devices that you can use throughout the course of the game. You have companions and different items that you can add to your deck that bolster your deck and make your turns a lot stronger. And there's also a ton of RNG, which I think is good to have in certain games. That sort of, I don't know if you can consider this Ameritrash. There's no dice or anything, but you have this dragon that is chasing you throughout the game, and to determine the damage taken, you draw cubes from a bag, so you have no idea if it's going to be you, if it's going to be your opponent getting hurt, or everybody. So I don't know, I love this game. It's very chaotic fun, but also a good amount of strategy in it, and it's great. I love Clank. Next up, we have Zombicide 2nd Edition. Now, this is a cooperative game for up to 6 players where you're working together to slay zombies and complete your objective. Now, I wanted to include this for sure because A, it is up to 6 players, which is higher than a lot of the other games in my collection, and I also just love zombies. Left 4 Dead was one of my favorite games growing up. I love The Walking Dead. all of that stuff just really made me want to include this in my collection. It's also a pretty lightweight game compared to, you know, some of these other games in my collection up to this point. It's very straightforward. You can do 3 things essentially on your turn. You can move your character, you can attack zombies, or you can search/complete an objective. So very straightforward, easy to understand, and quite a bit of depth too. You know, people would consider this a beer and pretzel style game, which kind of means it's just like more lightweight, easy to understand, which for the most part it is, but at the same time you really do need to work together, because if even one character dies throughout the scenario, you all lose. So you've got to be really careful and strategize together. But yeah, this game's so good. There's a lot of different iterations of Zombicide. I personally like 2nd edition just because it is that modern day, and I like that the most. But all in all, any Zombicide's great, and I think definitely warrants a spot in anyone's collection. Next up, we have Railroad Inc. Now, this is a lightweight roll and write game where you are rolling dice each round, which are going to show you which routes you can use. They're going to be different roads as well as different railways. And throughout the course of 7 rounds, you're connecting all of these routes, trying to make the longest railway and the longest road. And the person with the most points at the end of the game wins. So very straightforward, very light. I feel like this game rounds out my collection pretty nicely. I have a lot of heavy games on here, a lot of midweight games, not too many lightweight games. You know, I have Sea Salt and Paper, Skate Summer is debatable, but really, you know, having another lightweight game like this is just really solid. I do prefer to play on the app just because I can play in like 5 minutes, really quick, but this is still really solid. I also don't know if I would have chosen this game if I knew the prompt before before choosing these games, but I'm not gonna cheat you guys, I'm gonna go with my gut. It's still a very great game, and like I said, rounds out my collection very, very nicely. Now my final picks are Star Wars Rebellion and War of the Ring 2nd Edition. These are both incredible games in their own right, and I couldn't choose one. I love both of these games. If you're unfamiliar with them, they're essentially 1v1 games where you are taking control of a different faction. In Rebellion, you can play as the Rebellion, of course, or the Empire. In War of the Ring, you can play as the Free People or the Shadow. And you are working to defeat your enemy. Now, it's very asymmetric. In Rebellion, you know, the Empire has tons of troops similar to the Shadow in War of the Ring, and you're working to seek out your opponent. In Rebellion, try to find the Rebellion's secret base and destroy it. In War of the Ring, you're hunting out the Ring Bearer and trying to defeat him, and it's just so good. Every time I play each of these games, it's so memorable. You know, I can vividly remember the last time I played both of these. It's like you're playing the trilogy, the movies, all over again, and it unfolds in a very different way, of course, than the movie. So it's like a brand new movie and a brand new experience every time you play it. It makes me so excited anytime I can get someone to play this with me. They are long. These are heavy games. Probably the heaviest game. Yeah, these would be the heaviest games on the list for sure. I played them a handful of times. It usually always takes at least 4 hours, so you kind of got to know what you're getting into. But having a game with this much depth, with this much replayability, with this kind of experience is something I could not include in my collection. So, and that wraps up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Comment below your 12 games though. I'm really curious to see if we have any overlap or what you guys think about the games that I've chosen. Also, if you are interested in getting some really awesome board game loot like dice trays or metal dice, all kinds of really awesome goodies, check out Harbor Loot. I have an affiliate link in the description below, which supports both me and the awesome company that is Harbor Loot. I've spoken with Robert several times, and he is a true board gamer himself, and he is wanting to give quality products back to the community. You know, I've talked about these dice trays several times in a variety of other videos, but they're great. I mean, since I've gotten these, I've completely replaced the Amazon ones that I was using, and yeah, they're awesome. You know, if you don't want to check it out, that's fine too. You can roast me in the comments below, but this is Jordan here at Totally Bored. We'll see you next time.